Welcome to My Creative Corner 3, a podcast about quilting, crafting, creativity, with a dash of garden, chatting about current interests and life in my northern town. You can find show notes at mycreativecorner3.com. You can also find all of my social media, how to purchase a virtual cup of coffee, and all events on the website. Please feel free to stop by and leave a comment. I really appreciate everyone who listens. Thanks for stopping by. Welcome to the podcast. Hello, everyone. It is the 30th of April. I can't believe it has been so long. Today is snowing. Oh, yeah. Can you believe it? It's 41 degrees. It's gray. It's snowing. A few days ago, it was sunny and warmer. Snow Mountain at the back of my property line has melted. The little buds on the trees are slowly turning into leaves, and it snowed. I do have some green grass in my iris, and my tulips and my daylilies are probably 8 to 10 inches tall. But boy, oh boy, spring is going to hit us probably really quickly, and then it'll be summer by the time it warms up and it can't make up its mind what it wants to do. There's been a lot going on, and then there's nothing that's been going on over the last few weeks. But where I want to begin is I really have been working on a lot of things, and I'd like to share them with you. I took a class, I went to Paducah, and I really have to say I got sick with just a little cold that turned into a big cold, that turned into a really big cold, and sinus and bronchitis stuff. Coughed for a month. I couldn't even inhale or exhale without coughing there for a few days. Everybody I know in my circle of friends, family, and community have had this bug, and that's why I'm hoping for warmer days, sunshine, and better things. I'm feeling better, but there's a few lingering things, whenever I get a sinus infection, and that just kind of triggers my balance. And then we have mold, mildew, and pollen going, so that, it just goes on and on. The bottom line is, I remember in my first year of nursing school, I had a professor who was quite elderly. And she said, if you live in Michigan, you're going to have sinus problems. It's just part of living in our state. And I grew up here, and I've spent most of my life here. So, surprise. I stitched a lot of things. So let's start on what I finished was the Honeybee Quaker stitch that I bought last fall at Primitive Gatherings. It is a Primitive Stitches pattern. It is so pretty. That is a teals with the honeybees are yellow as beehive stars in a Quaker feel. But also Primrose Cottage also what's the name of the pattern, is Primrose Cottage Designer. Made another pattern with the exact same colors, like in a series, that is so pretty. And I saw it at my quilt shop, so I bought the kit. And I have a gallery wall going with all of my stitches. They are in a hoop. And I'm thinking these may go in a hoop together and hang on that little gallery wall of stitches. We will see. If I left if I had enough room around the fabric to do that. That is my plan. But I'm not going to start the second project quite yet because I really have a lot of things that I need to get done. I continue to work on long arming. I long armed one for my mom, and then I long armed one for myself. It was the So Scrappy spools, and I really love how it turned out. I put a feather in the outer border, and then I did like it's almost like a twirling in Zentangle, and it's just a bunch of random lines that look like unspooling thread around all these spools of thread. I really love this quilt. It was a Lori Holt pattern, and it is an amazing pattern that was printed by It's So Emma. I would give that 5 stars. I would totally do that quilt again. But there's so many more I want to make. But I'm kind of thinking that part of why people listen is they want to hear about patterns in pattern writers and what they like about the pattern and what they don't like about patterns. And I'm telling you, Lori Holt's patterns by It's So Emma are amazing. And so are the patterns written by Primrose Cottage, or Primrose Stitches, Primrose Cottage. You know what? I better go double check. Yes, it is Primrose Cottage. So forgive me, I'm a little scattered. Feel out of practice, and my brain feels a little scrambled today. I even had a second cup of tea. I have been working on a couple of things. So let's talk about the projects that I'm working on, and then we'll talk about the projects that I want to work on. And today's theme, which is going to be adding whimsy to my life. And I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do it this summer. So I have been working on a impulsive sign up on Conquering Mount Scrapmore with Brenda. It is a Facebook group and a YouTube channel. But on the Facebook group, there are block swaps and challenges and other things. I signed up for a block swap because I want to make the terry quilt so bad. If you watch Kate at the last Homely House, she did a quilt that she just revealed the full quilted project. And it is Terry Rowland's color wash quilt. It is so cool. And so what I signed up for is to make 110 3.5-inch blocks. Yes, 110 of them. 10 to swap, 10 for myself. Now, I'm making them from scraps, so each bag that's going to go out in the mail is going to be unique. And I got thinking, I miss block exchanges. Do you remember block exchanges? I miss them so much. I made some really pretty quilts with the blocks people gave me. I did them locally with a group of friends a while ago, and we would meet every month or two, and we would come up with blocks to exchange and have show and tell, and then it all ended, and that's that. But I have been going to Quilt Guild, and I have been working on things to show them, which is motivating. And next month at Guild is my month to teach wonky log cabins. Now, what's interesting is the terry blocks are also improv. And I'm going to show them that for the center and how to build upon it to make a wonky log cabin. And those are things I'm working on for quilting. I'm going to load another quilt. It's probably going to be one of my mom's, because remember, I'm going to do one of my mom's, one of mine, and I'm going to limit a whole bunch of starting quilts because I want to get these things finished. I really do. I just feel this heaviness of finishing something this year. Something. I am also finishing the Fantabulous Scrappy Stars. The last block has been pieced, and I need to assemble it. I have all of the rows assembled except for one, and I realized I needed to make more sashing. So I hope this weekend to assemble the final thing. And it's not 100% perfectly lining up because my blocks aren't all exactly the right size. I think I tried very hard to make them the right size, but Angel has mastered the 1/4-inch seam, and I think that I have not. I keep thinking if I upgrade my sewing machine, maybe that will help. We know the truth. It will not. I just have to master it. So I'm assembling the Fantabulous Scrappy Stars, and then that top will be done and in the bin of all the tops to be quilted. I've also been crocheting. I'm still put a pause on assembling the granny squares for the cardigan because I realized I don't have enough made. So I've been working on making some granny squares. And then a light bulb went on when my husband said, hey, the Highland Game people that we talked to last fall who wanted those crochet towel toppers, I'm going to see them again this summer and again in the fall. Do you have those done? And I'm like, no, I don't. I haven't started. I thought I had 6 of them done. I found 4 and all of the towels and all of the yarn. So I would like to do 10. And I bought some plastic buttons that seemed too small. So I bought wooden buttons and I like the look better. I'm sure they won't wash up as well, but that's what I'm going to put on them. And I had to make the strap longer than the pattern because modern day appliances have chunkier stove handles and refrigerator handles. So I wanted them to be able to go over mine, but I'm not sure what kind of appliance the person that I'm gifting these to have. But her mother missed having those, and I said, sure, I can make them. I say that a lot, and then I find myself realizing I've never done this before, or I did 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and I had to refresh my memory. So I want to get those towels done so that they will make a nice presentation in a nice gift bag because I've waited 9-10 months, maybe a year by the time I have them done, because I am slow, very slow these days. And I bought some Costco towels, and I love them so much. They have great hand towels for kitchen and bath, and at a good price. So I'm thinking that they should enjoy them. And then I want to talk about an applique class I took at my local quilt shop. Now, I'm going to give a probably 2.5 stars on the 5-star scale for this class because it didn't say anything on the class description about already taking an applique class and knowing how to raw edge applique. I took the class to learn how to do raw edge applique. But that is not what the intention of the teacher was when I got there. She made a class sample that she drew all of the pattern pieces, and they're flowers in a vase, and they look like daylilies and what's the little flowers? Forget-me-nots or something like that. And that was the class. We cut them out and fused them for 4 hours. And she gave us a 5-minute demo. I spent money on all of the things for the class. I had scraps, thank goodness. Way overbought on the Steam-A-Seam 2, which was her go-to glue, and the sewing machine. And I never even hardly used it. I forced her to show us more. and she showed the straight stitch for raw edge applique, but she said she'd rather use a zigzag stitch. I was frustrated, and my Quilt Guild member who went with me, Heather, she was done and didn't even like the looks of the pattern. And I'm like, I like all of the components of the pattern, but I'm not sure I like them all together. So I don't know. It was a thumb sideways 2.5 because it didn't meet my expectation, and had the course description say that she was not going to show you how to do machine applique and to take a different class, I would not have been disappointed. The good news was the class wasn't horribly expensive. The bad news was I have all this steam seam, like yards of it, that I'm not so sure I will use. And you know how steam seam is in a lot of these fusibles. They age and they don't work. So I did learn a few tips in the class, and I learned how to use the applique sheet that I have, which is where you can tack some of your applique pieces together before you put them on the background and then fuse the whole flower together. But anyway, that was that class, and I'm not sure I'm a big fan. I really wanted to learn how to do applique so that I can do my dear Jane, and you need to know how to applique. And I know friends who did it with raw edge applique and blanket stitch applique. And so I think I may just keep trying to master that so that I can do it myself. So that leads me up to going on a little trip. We took a week off, and the end of the week was the AQS Paducah show. Yes, the OG, the granddaddy of all the AQS shows. And I love AQS for many reasons. And I'll talk about that when we get to the Paducah show. But we started out the week doing some things that my husband and I both love to do. He loves the Civil War, and I love going to national parks. So there were several Civil War battlefields that we have not been to, and we have been to several. Antietam, Gettysburg, several in Tennessee and Virginia is on the list yet. But what's near Paducah is Shiloh. So we drove down to a place in southern Indiana and stayed. We ate at a great restaurant, and I, for the life of me, can't remember it. It's a hamburger place. It was so good. Some of the best burgers I've ever had. They had a proprietary hamburger meat. If I ever think of it, I'll put it in a show note. But we drove then to south of Nashville, where you can get on the Natchez Trace Parkway. And I did not know what the Natchez Trace was, and I learned about it. It is an ancient roadway from Nashville to Natchez, Louisiana, I think, and the city, and all kinds of people, all the way back to Buffalo, use this road. Native Americans use this road. 1812 soldiers use this road. And of course, soldiers during the Civil War. It's now preserved as a parkway with some of the old trace, they called it, saved, that you could actually walk on the land where people have been walking for a very long time, and it was very, very cool. It is not as mountainous as, say, the Blue Ridge Parkway. We're driving south toward Corinth, Mississippi. And it's beautiful, though. It's very pretty. There's a lot of birds this time of year that we saw, and we saw a few other wildlife. The leaves were fully out. The grasses were grown. It was beautiful. So we drove, like I said, to Corinth, Mississippi, because that's the nearest town to Shiloh. We spent 2 days, one day going through the entire Shiloh Park, the battlefield, the National Cemetery, learned all about the battle and its significance to our history as our country turns 250 years old this year. And then in Corinth, Mississippi, Shiloh's up in Tennessee, but in Corinth is the Shiloh Interpretive Museum. And it's small, but worth stopping. And it made you really stop and think. It was not, it did not miss my brain that we stopped at these places in the 250th year of our country. I will not talk politics here, but in this time where there is so much division and disagreement and no unity amongst families, friends, communities over politics, it just felt like some of the things they were talking about that we need to really, really be aware of. And not that I'm saying we're going to a civil war, but it's just those are the early rumblings of problems. And we should really look at trying to preserve our nation. That's what the Civil War was all about. At the end, it was preservation of us as a nation, not just a collection of 50, it wasn't 50 states, of the states that were there. And so we had a little time left before the quilt show started at Paducah. So we drove up to a Civil War Fort Donelson. It was on the, oh my goodness, the river. Was it the Tennessee River? There we go. On the Tennessee River, and near Fort Shiloh is where the Ohio, the Tennessee, and other rivers come together. So this fort was an earthwork fort. There's no walls. But again, you learned all about why the western part, what they called the Western Front of the Civil War, was so important. And U.S. Grant was the person in charge of the Union, and the Confederate leaders, I'm slipping. Anyway, he died at Shiloh, and it changed the course of how the war went. But anyway, it was interesting because the rivers and the trains were the superhighways of its time period, which, I didn't know that, but it made me realize how difficult crossing the land was if you're going through like the Natchez Trace or other parts of Appalachia, and with soldiers and cannons and all that. So it was beautiful. The parks are preserved and there's a lot of nature there, and we had beautiful views of the river and great lessons on history, which we love to do. And then it came to the time to go to Paducah. I must tell you that the sickness I had started 2.5 weeks before this vacation, and it left me weak, and walking was difficult. My balance wasn't good, so I used walking sticks the whole time, and I pulled my Achilles tendons trying to do some exercises on the floor, and when I got up, I felt my calves and Achilles pull hard. And what other, oh yes, both of our vehicles broke down, and we had major repairs that added up to a lot of money. The bottom line is I felt like I was not going to get to the show of my dreams. I've wanted to go to Paducah for a very long time. And one of my quilting friends who went before me, she passed away before COVID, and I inherited a lot of her stash, and I'm sure you've heard me tell her story. She and her BFF went to Paducah, and she said it was a great time, that I had to go. So we made a reservation at a hotel 9 months ago, probably 10 miles from Paducah, because you couldn't get a hotel close to town. A month ago, the reservation was canceled. My husband, since he's retired, spent a whole afternoon trying to find a place, which he did, and it was probably about a 30-minute drive to the actual show, but it was in rural Kentucky, but it was a great place to stay, honestly. It was near the Kentucky Dam. I learned all about the Tennessee Valley Authority and the dams and how managing water is so important, because right before we left, there was a lot of flooding in northern Michigan. And overall, I just felt like we're never going to make it. Come to find out, why did they cancel the hotel? It burned down. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad somebody found the reservations and realized they hadn't been called, and we were able to get another place at a nice little discount through the Hilton app. Anyway, Hilton Rewards, 2 thumbs up. I would give them 4.8 stars. Point 2 is because I couldn't figure out why that cancellation happened, and we didn't find out until after the fact that we got a text from the original hotel what happened. So the Paducah Quilt Show is an AQS show. The people that apply to these shows are professional quilters for the most part. Grand Rapids is known for the guild challenges, and this show is known for being the granddaddy of them all, right? It was the first AQS show that started, and everyone who's anyone tries to get into Paducah, much like Houston International Quilt Show, which I hear is double the size of AQS Paducah. Paducah, compared to Grand Rapids, which I go to most years, it is probably at least 2 to 2.5 times larger. There were over 500 juried quilts in the show. And then they had all of the special displays. There were the modern display from the National Quilt Museum, which is in Paducah, and I have been there. That is a 5.0, 2 thumbs up, you should go. I didn't go this time because it was difficult to get to. And Tula Pink was there, and she has a 20 years of Tula at the National Quilt Museum, and my friend saw that and said, you have to go if you can. So there were a lot of quilts. I planned on spending 2 to 2.5 days at the show, and I did sign up for a class on Friday afternoon for 3 hours. I was very tired with all of the walking. I didn't put in much more walking than I do on an average day at work, but I wasn't feeling the greatest. I was still recovering from all of this and then injuring myself. So I took my time, and I was worried because I'm using walking sticks, and I got there. I could not rent a scooter because they were all spoken for, and I missed the cutoff date by 1 day. Anyway, everybody else there was using scooters, walkers, walking sticks, canes, and there were so many people there. There is no rushing through this show. You have to time it right. There are 3 locations to see all the quilts. They put up a temporary dome building, which is one of those blow-up buildings. It's filled up with air. It had a nice floor in it. And that was where the 250th America quilts were. They were very, very pretty. The National Quilt Museum display was out there also. And the vendors, oh my, the vendors. So many vendors. I didn't go to all of the vendor booths, but I walked by most of them just to see what quilts they had in their booths. The main show, every quilt in the main show probably was a winner at another AQS show or had the potential of being a grand prize winner at any other quilt show they would go in. The winners were amazing. One of them was the quilt that I wanted to see. So I went there first, and it was Ricky Tim's The Visitation. Pictures do not capture the 3-dimensional quality of this quilt. and all of the quilting. It was all applique. And they did. I asked him, I said, how did you do this? Because there's no raw edge applique on this. And he had turned each piece, which there are probably thousands of pieces in this. And he said that he has those pieces secured by the dense quilting. Every edge is caught in the long arming, and it's fascinating. There's so much going on with that particular quilt. Now, the other quilt that won the overall winner is by Karen K. Buckley, Color My World. She was there most days. I didn't get a picture of her, but I did talk to her with a group of women who were from a guild, and her quilt is called Color My World. Karen K. Buckley won the Bernina America Best in Show. The thing about this quilt is it took her 10 years to do it. It's applique also. The back is as beautiful as the front. There's a million pieces in it. It has very dense quilting, and it took whoever quilted it, and I didn't catch if it was her or someone else, a year to long arm it. It was very, very pretty, but I can see why it would take so many years. And I'm not sure how long Ricky Timms took, but his quilt was amazing, and he was as gracious as anyone else, and so was Karen K. Buckley. Just wonderful people. And because Karen won, her quilt now will live for the rest of the quilt's life at the National Quilt Museum. I guess it's an honor if you win the Paducah show that it goes to the National Quilt Museum, and of course you win prize money as well. There were loads of quilts that I've seen the makers before. There's some very famous Japanese makers who were there, and their quilts did very well. And there were hand applique, there were hand quilting, and the usual miniature quilts, small quilts, long arm, stationary, machine quilting. It's all different categories. So the main floor had a lot. The smaller quilts, wall hangings, and miniatures were in another venue, which is in the convention hall, second floor, which is connected to the expo center, but you still got to walk across there. They had places to rest, lots of places, so that was well. And the thing that I like about going to a quilt show is that I go alone most of the time, and this year was no different. And it didn't matter when I sat down, the people next to me or the people around me struck up conversations, and I was not lonely at all. It's fascinating to sit and talk to people who all love quilts as much as you do. And we were talking about all of the things that we really enjoyed. And then the icing on the cake was the class I took. Now, the class was by Aitor Sariaba. He is from Spain, and he is Wonderfil's sponsored education instructor. And he's going to all the AQS shows, I found out. So I'm going to try to take another class in Grand Rapids. But he is championing slow stitching. I've been trying to do slow stitching, and I couldn't figure out why when I do my Making Zen retreats, I don't have the same materials as some of the people who are teaching. And he had a kit that we bought, and he showed us how to do the embroidery part for letters. And then we all kind of played around with the snippets of lace and felt, and he had the needles and the proper embroidery thread, which is a size 8. Wonderfil supplied those, of course, and they had a great needle too. Wonderfill did. And a lot of people brought things from home, and he was able to help us make decisions as we were playing around with layouts. The whole class was more about being inspired and knowing the basis of slow stitching. And he brought lots of pieces, let us photograph them. He had even more pieces in his mini booth in the Wonderfill. I would highly recommend, if you are into slow stitching, it's about having all of your pieces on a European linen base, which made the difference. Cottons, I tried muslins, I tried to find linens. The linen cotton blends don't work as nice. They don't have the hand or the structure. European linen is long strands of flax, where ours are short and chopped up, which makes it different. If you can even find 100% linen, which you probably have to go to a garment making website. All that to say is I'm getting very excited about slow stitching. And in fact, it may take over cross stitching in the evening, because I love recycling, upcycling old pieces and snippets into meditation or snippet scrolls, which is a meditative process while you do it. And we were working on a journal of collages of things, and that's how all of his creations are. And embroidery and handwork is very much part of his culture, and we got to hear a little bit about his growing up years, and it was lovely. We had a great time. In fact, 2 thumbs up. I would do a 4.85 on the class, because I just could have spent all day doing it instead of just 3 hours. But the good news is I'm going to try to take one of his other classes that he offered in Grand Rapids. And if he offers the same classes he did in Paducah, one is a large piece, which is broken up into 30 days with pre-printed calendar segments with his artwork, much like the book has his artwork in it. He's quite an artist. And there is a snippet roll class and an amulet class. So we'll see what I can get. Absolutely had a wonderful time. And I like AQS shows because it shows you so much of different kinds of quilts. And I do like modern quilts. I'm not sure I like making them as much as some people do. And that's where QuiltCon, and I think everyone likes going to that, but it's very difficult for me to get there because it's in February. Trying to leave Michigan in February is nearly impossible some years. But this is a variety. And since they have a new director of AQS, they are getting more modern, more interesting, and more variety of quilts to look at, which I find very inspiring and fascinating. I am a member of the AQS Quilt Guild, which quilt club, I don't know, you join anyway, and it's all virtual, but they do have, classes and retreats and cruises and all kinds of things if you're a member of AQS. And I get their magazine. I enjoyed AQS shows because of the variety and the large number of quilts. They do shows well. The aisles are pretty spacious considering the number of people that are there. You can get up close and personal with a lot of quilts. At the really big shows, they put the chains up in groups of 3, so you can't get a ½ inch off the quilt like you can in Grand Rapids. But the good news about it is there's places to rest. They have food vendors there as well as hundreds of vendors that you could see, and all of the machines, all of the sewing machines, all of the long arms to test out. I talked to the Janome vendor about a professional grade sewing machine, and oh my, it is gorgeous. Not getting it this year, but And that's why I like the AQS shows. There's so much. And let's talk about whimsy. It is the theme of so many people on YouTube. And whimsy, part of the way I want to add whimsy to my life, is this slow stitching project. It can be very whimsical and it can be multimedia. And I like the idea of using multimedia things that I already have. And it's going to be an adventure. It can be any theme, but I love fairy gardens and flowers and plants. And that may be how I add a little whimsy to my life and my crafts. I want to make a flower crown. One of those flower crowns is called a Blumenkranz at Alpenfest, which is our summer festival. And I haven't had one in years, but I thought, wouldn't it be fun to wear one? And I'm still pondering the purchase of a tiara for my next birthday at the end of May. Whimsical, silly, fun, and adding some not so serious and playful things to some of my seasonal decor. And I am taking up something that is, I've tried once or twice, so I know I can do it. It's not so much whimsical, but it could be, is sourdough bread making. I tried it well before lockdown and people tried sourdough, but I want to do more tactile things and be more creative with it. And whimsy, I don't know, I've heard people jazzing up these breads with cranberries and jalapenos and a whole bunch of different things. The other part is you can do some whimsical decorating of the bread before you bake it. And all of that comes back around to the Analog Life project, which I am working on and getting way better at. I find that I am on my phone, as we all are, but it is way less and more intentional. So that's a wrap on this week's podcast, and I will do show notes at my website. Love to hear from you. Love to hear if you went to the AQS show. Tell me what quilt you liked, and did you get in line to go to the quilt museum? I take my hat off to anyone that went there during Quilt Week, because at the Quilt Museum alone, they said there was about 37,000 people that went to the Quilt Museum. And Hancock's of Paducah, I hear, was very busy also. So anyway, you have a wonderful time this week working on any creative project. Take time every day to make something and be creative.